What's the difference between a Corvair and a Corsair? All right, let's hear about it. This is The Real Story with Adam and Sherry. I'm Adam Hamalian,
And I'm Sherry Hutchens.
and this is where two broker associates in Contra Costa County talk about all things real estate. Hey, good morning, Sherry. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Uh,
Good.
it's
What's going on?
Go ahead.
It's
Well,
you first, I insist.
well, it's kind of been a weird weather week. I know that has nothing to do with real estate, but it
No, but
was
let's talk
scorching
about it.
hot like Friday, Thursday, and Friday, and then by the time
Mhm.
Sunday and today rolled around, it was much cooler.
Yes, chilly last night actually.
Yeah, yeah. Spring weather, right? Everywhere is inconsistent. You got thermals and you got winds blowing in.
Well, I heard that June 1st is the meteorological, is that a right? Is that correct spelling, saying meteorological beginning of summer, as opposed to the astronomical start of summer,
All
which is
right.
June 22nd-ish.
Well, see, and I just think that starting the day after Memorial Day, or actually starting Memorial Day weekend, that's summer.
It's summer, yes. A
Memorial
lot of
Day to
different
Labor Day.
definitions.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but it was awfully cold last night for summer. So
Yeah.
I'm sure it will warm up in about a month. We'll be complaining about how hot it is, or I will be.
It'll be like 100 degrees outside.
Uh,
Absolutely.
yep, yep. So that's the weather. What's going on in the market?
What's interesting, I think the market's not unlike spring weather where it feels hot and cold all at the same
Hmm.
time, and
Yeah.
it's a little hard to predict. It's interesting. We were showing some houses this weekend to some clients, and there we have some clients that were really interested in a house, and it is an interesting house. It has some things to it that are hard to know
Mhm.
what buyers are going to do with it because it
Yeah.
is dramatically underpriced for the neighborhood it's in,
Yep.
and um, and yet it doesn't seem overpriced. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later. The rest of the market is, again, some houses are selling quickly. The houses
Mhm.
that, surprise, surprise, look good, ready to move in, and other ones, not so much. I was just up at the Rossmore marketing meeting this morning, and there's still about 100 homes for sale in Rossmore. About 10 went pending this week is what we've been averaging for the last probably 4 or 5 months.
Mhm.
And only five closed. Ours was one of them. But just
Yay.
people are not getting showings. And yet things are still, you know, like one agent said he had two go pending this week. One had been on the market over 60 days, and one had been on the market 6 days. And if
That's
that doesn't
crazy.
sum up our market right now, I don't know what else does.
What do you think's going on at Rossmore that's causing that?
The thing about Rossmore is it has a regular rhythm to it that is not beholden to the market, the
Hmm.
stock market, the interest rates.
Hmm.
Um, and it just
Seasonality.
Yeah, there's a natural turnover of homes for life cycle reasons.
Hmm.
And but there's so normally they tick off pretty well. They come on the market and they sell because people are, in that stage of life. But because of the insurance issues up there and because of interest rates and maybe the tariffs, though it's hard to know exactly how that is playing in.
Hmm.
I think that buyers are a little slower to jump in, just kind of because of the unknown. So interesting always.
I think the HOA dues are so high right now. When they were 700 and $800 a month, it was easier to justify why they were that high because you get so many amenities in Rossmore. But when they're 12 and $1,300 and more, it's a little harder to do that.
Yeah. I think what we're seeing is a great devaluation in homes there
Hmm.
versus 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and it just is, typically condos anywhere don't keep up pace with the market the way single family homes do.
Yep.
But I think even more so in Rossmore and
Yeah.
because of the increase in HOA dues. So yeah, I think that buyers need to do their investigation and be prepared. And if you want to go back and listen to last week's podcast, you hear us talk more about HOAs. But Rossmore is kind of a one-off. You really need to know what's going on there before you say yes, because there's not only co-ops, condos, but there's also co-ops, and you need to
Hmm.
understand the difference between those two. There's benefits to both. It's not universal
Yes.
one is better than the other, but it just depends on what your needs are.
Well, you know what I always say, it's not the real world. You go inside that gate and it's just completely different than it is out in the rest of Walnut Creek. And I think the most obvious reason is that the houses are so much less expensive than they are in Walnut Creek. There is no place in Walnut Creek that you can get a two-bedroom, two-bath condominium for $500,000 or less.
Yeah. And even taking in the cost of ownership with the increased HOA, they're still significantly discounted. And
Yeah.
for a place that is just really well maintained, I mean, and one of the things that Rossmore does really well is landscaping. So
There is not a leaf out of place in that. It's like
yeah.
hard to believe sometimes how perfect it is. So,
Um,
having said that, I would not live there, even though I am of the age that, many people are thinking of
oh,
moving
wait,
there.
you're over 55?
I know that's hard to believe, but yeah, but I will never live in Rossmore.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, all right. Well, I don't know how we got on Rossmore. We were just talking about the market in
You're
general.
talking about the market. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some interesting things going on in the market. We were going to show a house to a couple that's been looking for a while, offered on a couple and didn't get them. And it came on the market, I think Thursday. I sent it over to them, and on Saturday morning, it was gone.
Yeah, isn't that part of the challenge, right? Some things sit on the market and other things go. And it's
Yeah.
trying to figure out, do we need to rush out and go look at that? So,
Yeah. It was a $2 million house or just under 2 million. And I'm wondering if that price range, the people who buy in that price range are a little less affected by market uncertainties.
yeah, probably.
So,
Um,
right. Well, let's talk about that
but
house we showed.
yeah, well, even just thinking about you talking about you'll never move to Rossmore. And we were the teaser was the difference between a Corvair and a Corsair.
Corsair.
Corsair, and it was kind of funny because in my head I was thinking a Corsair. Corsair was a sailing ship, and I knew that it was also an aircraft vehicle from all the World War II movies
Uh-huh.
I watched.
Yeah.
But it was interesting doing a little like research on Corsairs being the ships of essentially what was it? Sanctioned piracy.
Sanctioned piracy.
That
Yeah.
was really weird to read about.
I think I Googled Corvair and got Corsair, and now have the two of them confused in my mind. So, but
Well,
yeah, sanctioned piracy. Go figure.
I know, but Corsair was the one that we were kind of inspiring our topic today, which is uh, playing off of Ralph Nader's book "Unsafe at Any Speed," where he writes about the unsafe nature of the car, the Corsair,
Corvair.
Corvair with a V.
Corvair.
Um, I had a friend growing up. He is, I don't know, probably 5 years older than me. John Sternham. He was a geological engineer, and he had two of them that he got like for a steal. Like, I mean, I don't think he was playing poker, but it felt like it was like he won them in a poker bet. I don't think that's how he got them, but he like it felt like he was robbing parts out of one to keep the other one running because nobody wanted them because of Ralph Nader's book where he wrote about how unsafe they were, that they had a risk of rolling over, and it just didn't matter for most people. They would not buy it because of how unsafe it was. And I think that that can be true about houses, and we referenced that
Mhm.
earlier. But even like you said, there's no way you'd live in Rossmore, even though
Mhm.
there's some really nice homes in Rossmore up in the 2 million range and higher. In fact, there's a 2.2 million one on the market right now, and it's
Mhm.
not even one of the single family homes.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, it doesn't have anything to do with Rossmore quality of homes. There's no Ralph Nader out there saying don't buy in Rossmore. I just don't like living in those close quarters with four shared walls and everybody looking out their window to see what's going on. And yeah.
yeah.
It has nothing to do with the quality of the homes.
Yeah, but the house we showed this weekend came pretty close to us saying we don't think you should buy this house. Um,
I
you
would
know,
not buy that house.
yeah, but I think that for our clients, I think that they're young and adventurous.
Hmm.
I think that they're willing to take on the project. I think that is, I remember when we first started partnering, a phrase that you used when we were interviewing with buyers, you said that sometimes our best advice is to talk you out of buying a house.
Hmm.
And while I do think it's true, I never really thought about it quite so harshly or black and white. It's like, yeah, actually, there are some houses out there that I wouldn't buy under any circumstances.
Yeah.
And for a lot of other people, they probably should heed that same warning that they're biting off more than they can chew.
Hmm.
So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of those kind of property defects, and even for the ones that have those, there's still buyers out there. It's just not for most of them. I was thinking about the one on Diablo, it's a Diablo View that we sold. That was the off-hill one without that the sellers when they bought it.
Diablo Drive,
Diablo Drive, that's right.
Lafayette. Yep.
Yeah, when our set, we represented them as selling, but when they had bought it about 20 years previously, it was so unlevel. It was 14 inches out of level from one end of the house to the other.
Hmm. Yep.
14 inches.
That's a lot. It would scare most people off. I don't even
Yeah,
know how they went inside to look at the house. But he was a engineer,
structural engineer. Yeah,
structural engineer. It didn't phase him.
did not phase him, and he brought his own crew out there because he knew what it's supposed to do. Paid his own crew
Hmm.
to level his own house.
Yeah.
And 20 years later, I mean, there was still slight slopes in the house, but like well within tolerances. And he did an addition that was just really kind of an amazing addition to it. But
Hmm.
I mean, everything was super over-engineered by the time he was done with it. But
Yeah, that house had the most stunning views.
yeah, it did. And I think that but it's a good example of for most people that was like I'm not unlivable at any cost.
Uh-huh.
Nobody wanted to buy it. I think it had been on the market forever, but it
Yeah.
took somebody who had the special knowledge to do it.
And the lack of fear, you know.
Yeah,
I think people are afraid there's gonna, something's gonna be a money pit or that there's gonna be some way that the house is irretrievably repairable or unrepairable.
yeah,
And I think any house can be repaired if you have the money to do it. Have never heard of a house that just needed to be torn down. Well, that's maybe not too. I mean, we've sold some pretty awful houses, you and I. We sold one that had been a rental that was maybe it was just cosmetic. I mean, it was a wreck.
yeah,
But structurally, it was okay. But a buyer doesn't know the difference, I don't think, most of the time between, is this a cosmetic repair or is it a structural repair that's going to cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars? And that's where we come into play.
yeah. I think it's a classic example that almost every buyer we work with at some point asks, "Can we move this wall?" I mean, if there's a question that gets
Yeah.
asked more than that one, I'm not sure what it is.
Yep.
And the answer is somewhat dissatisfying because the answer is always, well, yes, at the right price. And then we try
Yep.
and, after we put that parameter out there, then we try and do a little snooping around, a little house detective, and like, is it a bearing wall? And if it's not a bearing wall, that reduces structural and engineering costs. But you
Yeah.
still have things like, well, if you're going to move the wall, you have to be able to patch the ceiling on the floor in a way
Mhm.
that you'll be happy with
Yeah.
because it's not an automatic that you'll be able to find that material if it's flooring in particular. But if you're going to go ahead and refloor the whole house, well, then sure, absolutely. It
Yeah.
reduces that as a cause also. I think one of the harder things to fix are slabs. That they tend to involve a little bit more work. And I'm not an expert in this, so anybody listening, please don't take Adam said
Mhm.
this. But I have a we have friends who are he's an architect and they had a slab that had a crack significant crack in the middle of it. And I believe what they did is they cut a channel out of the middle of the slab and then drilled into each side and inserted rebar and then put a concrete, I'll say patch, but they, essentially made it with two cold joints for this patch down the middle. And they seem to be happy with it. It seems to have been
Mm,
stabilized. I mean, I think that that's kind of the question when it comes to slabs. Is have you fixed the problem that led to the crack,
yeah.
not just have you fixed the crack?
Well, and how do you identify the problem because it's covered up by a house?
Right,
There's
right,
a
right.
house sitting on the slab. You can't go down into a crawl space and look around and see what the problem is. I mean, I don't even know after all these years in the business how you identify that. I heard of someone once lifting the house up and re-pouring the slab and then, putting all the components back into place, plumbing and all the things that needed to be there and then reattaching the house. That seems like a lot
Yeah.
of expense, but for the
But
right house, I guess that's what you do.
the right house, right location. It's
Yeah.
maybe that expense is worth it if you get a deal on the house, right?
Yeah.
Um, I was actually watching a video about leveling slabs. In this case, it was an outdoor patio, so not necessarily a structural item like a foundation.
Hmm.
They were injecting something through they drilled a hole and then they injected something underneath the slab and it lifted it up to make it level.
Oh, wow.
Really fascinating. And you,
Oh,
you know, do you know what they did? Do you remember a couple years ago they straightened out the Leaning Tower of Pisa?
yes.
And do you know how they did that?
I don't.
So what they did was they put water jets underneath the high side and began to slowly erode the soil out from the high side so that it would tilt back into alignment. And
Mm.
and what was hilarious, I think hilarious, because they had to, is they didn't make it straight on purpose. They just brought it straight enough so that it was structurally safe enough not to tip over.
Yeah, because it's a tourist attraction because it's crooked.
Absolutely. Yeah,
You don't
absolutely.
want to make it
So
too straight because all those tourists will go somewhere else.
exactly. And who else is going to be able to take a photo where they're pretending to hold it up?
Exactly. Oh, that's funny. So they straightened it enough so that wasn't going to fall on somebody or hit another
Yeah, but
building.
they did it by injecting water slowly to erode the soil underneath which is really one of the ways that slabs fail. Or have I ever drawn for you the diagram, the anatomy of a pothole?
And no, but I'm interested to see it.
Well, it'll be a little bit harder here to explain, but so you imagine there's a crack in the asphalt road, and water goes through that crack. And then as the water goes through that crack, it begins to erode the sub soil just directly underneath of it. So
Mhm.
whether it's road base or sand or whatever it is, and as that water continues to go down, it takes a little bit of soil with it and a little bit of soil, eventually creating a pocket underneath the asphalt. And then the asphalt just breaks into that hole. And that's how you get nothing to a pothole straight away. And sinkholes function similarly to that. The water is usually coming from another source, not just
Mhm.
going through the asphalt, but that there's an underground source of water that's eroding the soil. So yeah, those are all interesting problems that are harder to solve immediately.
And I
Um,
know about your fondness for potholes, so
yes.
I'm not surprised that you've done research on them. Oh,
For,
wait, I might have taught it in school too.
well, yeah, for those of you not paying attention, I had a pothole in front of my house. It's been about 10 years now, but I documented it pretty regularly on Facebook just out of humor. I took measurements of it. I made a Lego tower of Pisa and took a picture in it. I took a picture of a remote control Hummer driving through it.
Weren't you trying to get the city to fix it? And while they were taking their time
Uh,
deciding whether or not they were going to fix it, you were, social media-ing
I,
it.
yes, to the point that people still to this day send me memes about potholes. And I think that that's where I started using the phrase, I never dreamed of being a grumpy old man, but here I am killing it. I was,
Killing it, yes.
shaking my fist at the pothole in front of my house.
I think you missed it when it was gone, though.
A little bit. I had a friend who lives down the street came and took a picture of the pothole with my Christmas tree in my front window in the background. It's like celebrating the pothole, celebrating the holidays.
I love it. I love it.
Um,
Well, let's get back on track as much as I would love to talk about your pothole more. But so we went out to show this house on Saturday afternoon. It was, about 100 degrees. Thank goodness the air conditioner was on in there. And what did we discover when we walked into this house?
so there were some elevation challenges for this house.
That's
And
one way to put it.
when we normally say elevation challenges, and it was a concrete slab, we usually think about the slab cracking and then
Mhm,
it sloping, part of the house sloping.
mhm,
That was happening also, but that's not what the big concern was. So I'll start with the smaller stuff. They had remodeled the bathrooms and they had elevated the floor of the bathroom about an inch and a half. So you're walking down the hallway, you want to go to the bathroom, you've got to step up about an inch and a half to get into the bathroom. Now, it's not
mhm,
uncommon for there to be some floor elevation change when you go into bathrooms, especially if
mhm,
there's a tile floor, because you just have to have the space for the backer board and the hardy board and then the t thickness of the tile.
mhm.
Um, but this was more than that. This was about twice that difference. So that
It's
was
not usually something you can trip on. There's a
ye-
threshold there, and it
yeah.
just smooths that transition.
Yeah, usually it's the threshold is just like a little bevel piece to get you
Mhm.
from one floor to the other, and it's total usually maybe a half inch, maybe three quarters of this was almost 2 inches.
And let's clarify that when we say they had done it, we're talking about flippers,
Yes, and it's clear.
investors.
Yes, and it's unclear what it looked like before they took the house. We don't really know, but
Right.
that's our best guess. Well, I mean, the floor was new, the bathrooms were new, so they could
Yeah.
have fixed the problem if it existed beforehand.
Yes. We've been in those houses. We know that neighborhood.
Yep.
Mm, bathrooms don't look like bathrooms do not have a 2 inch step
No,
going up
no.
into them.
But that's like small potatoes compared to the major issue. Do you want to say what the major issue was? Or you want me to?
No, you're doing a great job.
So the house previously had a galley kitchen, which means that you walk down the center of the kitchen and you have counters on both sides, and the kitchen between the counters is 3 to 4 feet wide, maybe.
You can touch both countertops when you're standing in the middle.
Yes, and if somebody has the dishwasher open or an oven open or refrigerator open, you're not walking past.
Hmm.
And there previously had been a wall between the kitchen and the living room. Well, they took that wall out and opened it up, which in many ways was really nice. Created this great open space. It was exactly the kind of thing that people do. Like we said earlier, can I move this wall? In
Yeah.
this case, it wasn't structural, we assume, because the house was still standing and they had removed the wall. But what they didn't do was that apparently the original kitchen had a step up about 4 inches from the rest of the house, the rest of the slab, and they did not lower that down. So you have this open room, a big open space with the outline of the kitchen, including an island and wall cabinets that went up 4 inches. And um, so it's bad enough that it went up 4 inches, but then they kind of beveled that 4 inches down to the main floor with what looked like shelving paper,
Yes.
like
Peel and stick flooring.
peel and stick flooring. Absolutely. That
That didn't match the rest of the floor.
it was similar in color. I'll give them that.
Well, it was the same color. It was a different pattern.
Definitely a different pattern and a different material because
Yes.
yeah, it had like LVP, very cheap LVP. I'm not even sure that you consider it a
Oh my
plank.
gosh. It looks like it does look like shelf paper that they peeled off the thing on the back and stuck it down.
If if you want to see a picture of this, look up Sherry's Facebook page. She took a picture of me with 1 foot up and 1 foot down, and I'm tilted. It's really hilarious.
It
Um,
is very funny. And
even
for those
more,
of you, pardon,
almost as funny as my white legs because I was wearing shorts because it was 100 degrees.
sorry. beginning of summer, as we alluded to earlier.
Exactly.
You're probably asking yourselves, why are your clients interested in a house that has all these funky things going on? And we haven't even mentioned half of them. Well, this is a house that came on the market with an out of area agent and was priced at about 1.4. And then all of a sudden it came down to 1.3. And then they dropped it to $825,000. Now,
We're not going to talk too much about the details about the price just because it's still in the market and there's other things
yep.
that are going on. But
Well, at one point, which point our clients who couldn't afford 1.3 or 1.4 said, "Oh, wow, we want to go look at this house."
as did 70 other people that went to the open house.
That's right. 70 groups came through the open house.
Yeah. And it's about as incurable of a defect for a structure as you're going to get. I
Hmm.
mean, it is fixable. So I don't know for
It's
sure. I'm
not
not an
incurable.
engineer, haven't looked at it, but my guess is you're going to cut the concrete, you're going to jackhammer that out, and then re-pour the kitchen slab to match the same level as the living room slab. It's
Hmm.
not inexpensive, but it is in concept a doable plan.
Hmm.
You really got to be adventurous to want to jackhammer your floor out.
Our client's willing to do that.
Yeah. Well,
Or-
we'll
He
see
says
what
he
happens
is.
with that. Um, but it is one of those kind of things you just don't know the extent of it. And because it's such an unusual repair, it's difficult to find who's going to be the expert that's going to help you do it right. And
Yeah.
so, like the house that we started talking about that was 14 inches out of level, that was the right guy. He was an
Yeah.
engineer. It didn't bother him. He didn't have to pay himself for all the engineering needed to fix it. He could do
Hmm.
that part for free. And
Hmm.
that's part of what made it feasible for him
Yeah.
was he didn't have to pay all the extensive engineering fees. In this
Yeah.
case, I don't think there'll be extensive engineering fees. There'll probably be some, but
I think
uh,
it's just hard labor.
yeah. And the so we'll see. Our buyers are talking about whether they want to write about it. We're not going to. We should not talk too much specifics more bit more than that. But
Correct.
it is interesting.
You use the term incurable defect, and that's something that we use when we're teaching clients how to buy houses, because we just don't take them out and show them a house and say, "Here, sign here, let's buy this house." We teach them what they need to know to make an informed decision about a house. And one of the things we talk about is something that can never be changed. That is an incurable defect.
Yep.
So, an example of that would be backing up to a very busy road or a freeway, backing up to or in the neighborhood where there are visible high power lines. What are they called?
High tension power lines.
High tension power lines, something like that. That's never going to change. So that is the definition of an incurable defect.
And for some people, those items are, like in Ralph Nader's words, unsafe at any speed, just
Hmm.
unbuyable at any price that they just say,
Hmm.
I don't want to back up to a freeway. I'm willing to
Yeah.
buy a smaller house or move to a different neighborhood rather
Yeah.
than buy with those certain things. So I think backing up not just to a freeway, but to a busy road.
Hmm.
I think that, like you said, the high tension power lines. I think another topic that we've had to deal with recently is cigarette smell, and that it's very pungent and it's hard to get rid of.
Hmm.
And there's some people who it can be allergic health; they just can't be breathing it in at all because it might trigger physical responses. And for others, it's just so displeasurable that they just
Yeah.
like if you can't relax at home, where can you relax? And so if
Yeah.
that's something that's going to bring you stress or discomfort. What are some other things that you think are for not everybody, but for some people are like, yeah, I definitely can't do that.
Backing up to a school
Yeah.
or being near a
We had one
school.
client, nicest person. She just said, I don't like kids. I don't want to hear them.
She did. She did not like the sound of kids playing
Yeah.
and did not want to be anywhere near them. So, trying to think of other incurable defects.
So I think that lot slope, if it's on a hill, we
Mhm.
have a client who right now who looking for a home and will not buy a house that has that feels like it's on the side of a hill or a slope, needs to have a level property.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I think pools can be that way. We had a client who they had had family members have some, or not family, friends who had had some tragic experiences, and they would
Yeah.
not buy a house with a pool, even
Yeah.
though they were sure their kids were water safe.
Yeah.
And so it had nothing to do with the expense of ownership. It was more substantial than that. Well, you
Yeah.
don't live in Rossmore. You don't like old people.
My mom, when she was in her 80s, and we were talking about her moving to, a senior place, she said, I don't want to live with those old people. And it's like, oh my gosh, am I turning into my mother? It's not that I don't want to live with old people, but maybe I don't want to live with old people. I don't know.
Speaking of your mom and not wanting to live, didn't she suggest you move to the Dakotas and live on a farm at some point?
And marry my first cousin who was
What?
recently widowed.
What are you too good for the living on the farm there, Sherry?
Well, maybe. I am a California girl. I do not see me living on a North Dakota farm anytime soon.
You weren't born in California though, were you?
No, I was born in North Dakota,
Yeah, so
but
you
I
got
never
North
lived
Dakota.
there.
You got Dakota roots.
I never lived there, so
Okay.
maybe for a short amount of time on a farm. And I was the worst farm girl ever. I was afraid of the chickens. I was pretty much afraid of everything. It's just like I did not, it was not my thing.
But you had a belt buckle.
That's not North Dakota.
Uh,
That's a whole different story,
that's
which we're not,
Wyoming.
which we're
Wyoming's
not
where they
going to
got
talk.
the rodeos.
That's right. That is right. I think the biggest rodeo in the United States is during Frontier Days in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Yeah. The
So
Grand National Rodeo? No, that was at the Cow Palace.
that's at the Cow Palace. I've been to that too. So
It's kind of weird to think about the Cow Palace hosting the Grand National Rodeo. I mean, like if there's no place else in America that quantifies the urban experience outside of New York, it's got to be San Francisco.
no kidding. Well, they used to parade the cows through the streets, right? There was
Yeah.
some sort of preparation for something. I don't know. I didn't plan on talking about rodeos and cows today. So I'm a little not up to speed on exactly.
When we
Uh,
don't have a well planned out podcast topic, when we go really far afield. Uh,
well, and then we're going to talk about pies on our next podcast. So
Cow pies?
not cow pies, not cow
Um,
pies.
okay, going back to unsafe at any speed, we actually sold a house that seemed unsellable in Berkeley a couple years ago because it was directly on the Hayward Fault. It could not get
Right
insurance
on top
because
of it.
it couldn't get insurance because it was on a fault and it was in a high fire zone. And the person who bought it paid cash and self-insured. I mean, that's about as close as you're going to get to being a unsellable house, and yet somehow we miraculously found a buyer for it.
So for our out of area listeners, and we have a few, tell them what the Hayward Fault is.
Okay, so the Hayward Fault, so earthquake faults are like a spider web throughout California, and you probably have heard about the big one. They made movies about the San Andreas Fault, and Loma Prieta was along that fault.
So a
But
fault line is a separation in the earth. Is that what it
yeah,
is?
yeah. So it's where the crust, and there's different kind of faults. So there's a slip strike where it moves one way or the other, and then there's a subduction where it goes under, and then whatever.
Tectonic
Yeah,
plates.
yeah, yeah. So that crack where there's movement goes right underneath Memorial Stadium at the University of California where they play football. And this house is directly just outside the stadium.
Yeah, sitting right on it.
That's good. Excuse me. And so they did major renovations on Memorial Stadium to make it earthquake safe, but this
Yeah.
house is not that way. Although the previous owner had done some significant foundation work, but it was directly on where the house is going to slip. Uh,
It's going to go one way or another. Gorgeous
The
house,
upstairs
by
is
the
going to go
way.
this way, and the downstairs is going this way, and never the twain shall meet. And it's moving at like a
Gorgeous
quarter
house.
inch per year or something.
Gorgeous house. Craftsman style. View of San Francisco
Yeah, yeah,
from
yeah.
the house. Stunning. But on the
Did I
fault.
tell you that my mom lived on that street? I'm not the part that was connected there, but below the neighborhood when she was at Cal.
No, I didn't
In,
know that.
yeah, in the 50s. Anyway, The
So someday we're going to have the big one's going to come. And I think that San Andreas Fault, we've already had the big one. Hayward Fault is due, right?
yeah, yeah.
Something like that.
Well, they're always due. They're always due. My brother who lives in Oregon has been researching this, and he thinks that the next major earthquake is going to happen off the coast. Sorry, Paul. Going to happen off the coast of Oregon and cause a tsunami, and it's going to have this water that comes up the Willamette River Valley, and so he's like figuring out where he wants to live so that he's not inundated by it. Actually, I think he did some more research and discovered that he doesn't have to worry about it, but you
Is
know.
that what happens when you retire? Do you
He,
have time to do that kind of stuff?
Yeah, he needs to go visit his kids and not be looking for conspiracy. He's not a conspiracy theorist, Paul.
No,
I'm
no, he's
sorry
a
I'm
very
throwing you under the
smart
bus.
man.
I'm just having fun with you.
All
Um,
right. So where were we? We were
okay,
at the
yeah,
house.
houses that we would never buy on top of
Yes.
earthquake faults. Nowadays, you got to question whether you're going to buy anything that's in a fire zone, which is not in an urban setting, but would you go buy in the foothills? I mean, right now nobody wants to buy in Orinda. I shouldn't say nobody, but it's more challenging.
Yeah. Because
For
you can't
those of
get
you who
insurance over
don't
there.
remember that, there was a major fire in the Oakland Hills in the 90s, that was directly opposite the hills from where Orinda is. And while there are some circumstances around that we could learn
Had
from,
nothing to do with climate change.
no, well, no, but it did have to do with there's a lot of material to burn, and the
Yeah.
Orinda side is not any different. All those trees are there too.
Yeah, I think 3,000 homes burnt.
Yeah,
Yeah, it looked like a war zone.
including like a fire battalion chief. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the yeah,
Homes we wouldn't
so
buy.
yeah, maybe not in a fire zone. Um, I'm trying to think. I mean, like where I currently live, I back to a busy street, and at the time it was what I could afford, and I knew that it
Yeah.
would be detrimental to our value when we sell, and I don't think we're going to sell anytime soon, but I would not buy next to a busy street again if
Yeah.
that would be one of the reasons why I would be moving.
Yeah.
It's been bad for the last 20 years, but as I've become a cranky old man, I want to have my peace and quiet. So,
When I lived in San Francisco, I lived on California Street twice. California is a major street. It runs from downtown financial district almost all the way out to the Great Highway. Not quite. But I lived on California and 10th, which was noisy. It was a four-way stop. People would run that stop sign all the time, and we'd hear a big crash, and somebody would have, had an accident out front. And then I lived on California and Buchanan, which was one block up from Fillmore, and it was an acceleration up to at the top of a hill where you then drop down into the financial district. And the noise never bothered me ever on either street because I don't know, I just got used to it.
yeah,
I didn't know any better. And then, so when I moved to Walnut Creek, I bought a house that backed up to a busy street, Bancroft Road, and it drove me crazy. Maybe I
oh,
was older
interesting.
and crankier at that point, but I just, yeah, the noise got to me. So who knows?
Yeah,
Incurable defect. I could never move that house that backed up to Bancroft Road. You can never move your house that backs up to a busy street,
yeah,
you know. So it's something that we talk to clients about. How do you feel about noise? Is it, because you can't change it once you buy it.
yeah. I think during the coming out of the pandemic and interest rates were down to nothing, and the market for sellers was about as hot as it could get.
Yeah.
I think buyers were forced to pay for homes that had defects that they just had to accept because otherwise they weren't going to get the house.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, I think that hopefully none of our clients have remorse that way that they were forced to take something they didn't want. But I know that as an industry wide, that definitely is true. And we're starting to see buyers now have a little bit more pause as they look at
Hmm.
these things like, I don't really want to live with a power line. I don't really want to live with that street noise, or I don't want to live across the street from what appears to be somebody working on cars all the time. They might be a
Yeah.
really nice neighbor. They just don't want to look at cars being worked on all the time.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think you can tolerate a lot more at 2.5% interest rate than you can at 7 or 8.
yeah,
Things start to bother you a lot more when you're making that big mortgage payment
yeah.
and
Yeah,
a high interest rate.
or houses that have defects that are
Yeah.
like you think, I love how you can say you can learn to get used to anything. And when the market is cooking, you believe that more than when the market is a little soft.
Hmm.
And you're like, yeah, I don't want to get used to that. I know maybe I could, but I don't want to get used to fill in the blank. The bedrooms being a little bit small, the primary bathroom
Uh-huh.
having a phone booth shower stall, and it's so
Uh-huh.
small. I go use the hall bathroom shower
Uh-huh.
because I can't bend over and shave my legs. You,
Exactly.
you should see my legs. Um,
So
Sorry everybody for that image, but if you want to see them, they're in the photo that Sherry pasted of me about the sloped floor. See, all things come back to it.
So we should do a podcast on all my Sherryisms because I've got a bunch of them, and one of them is, "Oh yeah, you can get used to anything." And I always preface it with, "You're going to hear me say this," and I'm half joking most of the time, but it's usually in relation to something that somebody walks in and says, "Oh my God, I cannot handle that ceiling fan. That is the ugliest thing I've ever seen." And I think to myself, yep, in 10 years, when you call me to sell that house, that ceiling fan's going to still be there. That's what I'm
Absolutely.
talking about. You can't get used to, having a freeway, running through your backyard.
When I lived in Dixon, we had friends who bought a new house, and the builder had left some masking tape on a window above where their front door was. So I mean, you had to get a ladder out to get to it, but
Yeah.
and it was there the whole time they owned the house until they sold it. It did not, that piece of masking tape, it was like 6 or 7 years.
You
And that
stop seeing
masking
it.
tape well, you don't really, yeah, it wasn't in your line of sight and you just forget it's there.
Yeah. You can
Yeah.
get used to anything.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's just common nature for us it becomes home. It's yours, even with the defects and all. It becomes homey. And
Yep.
sometimes, I think about like, do you remember the movie It's a Wonderful Life?
Yes.
So they buy that old house, and
Yes.
the top of the baluster comes is loose, and so
Hmm.
when he goes up the stairs, he pushes himself off, and it comes out in his hand,
Uh-huh.
and it's like he's so annoyed by it, and then at the end, after everything is reordered and everybody's back,
Yeah.
he comes out and he kisses it, right? The very defect that he's been griping about as long
Yep.
as they've owned that house becomes a thing that is endearing to him.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe it wasn't about the house, and that was,
Oh, no, but yes, I totally get it.
your Frank Capra moment. All right. Uh, I think
All
that
right.
that's about it. I mean, are there any other things you think are just like absolute deal breakers? I think it's just different for everybody.
It really depends on the person. The house that was 14 inches out of level is a deal breaker for 99% of people. But
As it
that one,
should be. Yeah.
as it should be, yes. So, no, I think moving forward, offers are due on that house that has the peel and stick floor, and it looks like we're going to write an offer on it. So, stay
Well,
tuned.
stay tuned. Yeah. I mean, I will say that on any given house, there are things that you need to see clearly to know whether it's a risk you want to take, which is why we recommend home inspections and, if necessary, foundation inspections, roof inspections. There are houses that we will recommend that our clients don't buy, and sometimes
Yeah.
that's client specific, and sometimes it's like this is going to be hard to resell
Yeah.
at any price. And
Yeah.
so purchase cautiously. One of the advantages that we have is our years of experience to be able to help people see those things before
Yeah.
they jump in.
And I always feel a little guilty bad mouthing a house to a client, and I'll preface it with, this is the good stuff about this house. And the other day when we were showing this one house, I, went through the list of things that were wrong with it, and then said, instead of saying the good stuff first, I said, let me tell you what the good things are about this house, because even though we've talked about it today, all the things that were weird about it, there were some good things about the house.
Yeah.
Um, and And you never want to talk someone out of buying a house, but you want to give them enough information and education about the pros and cons so that they can make their own decision.
Right. Yeah.
We always say, well, I often say we talk people out of buying houses all the time. We teach them how to evaluate whether it's the best house. That's really what we do for a living.
Yeah. Our primary job is to help our clients have an accurate picture about what they're buying and
Yep.
then let them decide what the value is.
Yep. Absolutely.
All
So,
right. All right. Sounds good. Thanks everybody for watching this week. We hope you enjoyed it. Um,
yes.
any other farewell goodbyes before we sign off?
No, I was going to say stay cool out there, but it looks like it's going to continue to be cold. So stay warm out there.
All right. Thanks everybody. Remember, Dorothy was right. There's no place like home. Bye now.
Bye bye.